What's up, everyone? It's your boy C-Roc on the What Are You Made Of podcast with Mike C-Roc. Guys, I keep bringing guests to you to add value to your lives, bring content, and also tell stories of where people came from so that you can understand no matter where you are, you can drive to success. And my guest today is Brett Knutson, is a serial entrepreneur and speaker who has started companies across several different industries. The first is a fashion company called Amare with products sold in stores. The second is a virtual receptionist agency called Mediphone that was recently acquired. The third is Hive, a social network designed to help people make new friends by connecting them with others nearby who share their same interests. And Brett's entrepreneurial journey has led him into working relationships with business icons, like the co-founder of EA Games as a lead investor for Hive, as well as many celebrities, professional athletes, and influencers. His companies have raised multiple seven figures in funding and 7 and 8 figures in valuations. So listen, this I like bios, I read them, but really what I care about, guys, as you know, I've been telling my story, telling you how I've gotten to where I am and how I'm going, where I'm going. And it's all about the story. So Brett, welcome to the show. And what are you made of, brother?
Thanks for having me. So I grew up in a really small town of about 600 people. So I was about 15 to 20 minutes from the nearest gas station or grocery store. And my dad was a cop. My mom was a teacher. And the town that I went to high school in was about a half an hour drive away. And it was a small college town. We had 2 private colleges. And
where was it, by the way? I don't mean to cut you off.
Northfield, Minnesota.
Okay.
Was the town I went to high school in. Nobody would know the township I was in. But so with the 2 small, like, private liberal arts colleges there, it was definitely the type of place that, a lot of people never leave. And so for me too, growing up in, an environment where I was surrounded primarily by farmers and blue collar workers, I lived my entire childhood without knowing what an entrepreneur was. And so by the time I was 18, all I really knew was a lot of what I didn't want to do. And I didn't know anything about what I wanted to do. I knew that I didn't really want to go to college, but everybody expected me to, especially, small town Midwest. And I just knew that the paths that I was given and the only options I was aware of it was nothing that was appealing to me. And so shortly after I turned 18, I, through a fluke incident, met a man named Scott, who became my first mentor. Scott had sold a commercial real estate portfolio for about $156 million and retired at the peak of the market at 42 years old. And Scott was the first person I'd ever met who had ever just done life differently, right? So he had taken a different path. He didn't go to college. Not to say that I have anything against college for, it's necessary for a lot of fields, but didn't go to college and had, pursued his dreams and done, did very well for himself. And so that kind of led me down a totally different path in life that started with a lot of failure.
Let me stop you for a second, because I don't want to forget this. This is important. And your story so far is very common. And people think that they need to have a really unique story from when they're younger to inspire or impact people. And I believe a lot of times the more common your story is of people being in an area where they are around a lot of small-minded, small thinking, broken thinking, and it's more common, you connect with more people. So this is for the audience, this is great, because I know there's people listening that have the similar situation, including myself. And I wanted to ask you on the mentor situation, how did the mentor situation come about? Can you get into that before you go any further? Because this is important.
Yeah, I mean, I got invited to an event that I didn't really understand anything about, and I decided to go. And basically, we met there. I recognized his daughters because they had gone to my high school, and I remember, the town that I grew up in. And I'm not glorifying these things, but, nobody had $1 million home and nobody drove luxury cars. But I remember his 2 daughters, teenage daughters, both had brand new Escalades. It was the only nice car in my entire town was these 2 teenage girls. And so I immediately wondered everything about him, right? Like I was like, this is the guy that everybody, but I didn't know anything about him. And so for whatever reason, back then when I was 18 years old, like I had like long, hockey hair, and I definitely didn't have any prospects for success in my future. But for whatever reason, he took a liking to me, and I learned a lot about sales and a lot about certainty and confidence and how you carry yourself and stuff like that from him.
But how did you, so when you met him, right, you meet him and an introduction happens and you have a connection now, but did you start to work for him? How did you develop the mentorship relationship? Because that's what a lot of people struggle with. They'll meet someone, man, I'd love to have him as a mentor, but they don't know how to approach it. So I always like to ask that question when people talk about mentors.
Yeah. So, I mean, I ended up getting into sales just because that's kind of like what everybody who, it's kind of like what everybody who doesn't go to college but doesn't want to make minimum wage does. And he saw that I was doing really well in sales, and he ended up basically recruiting me to kind of help co-found a direct sales company that he was going to start. And so that was extremely exciting for me. I think I was 21 at the time. And I left a very promising career at the marketing firm that I was at as a sales manager to do that. And that company ended up failing. And so that was a huge learning experience for me, because I saw somebody who I thought couldn't fail bad.
Right.
And what I learned from that was that success is not copy paste. Just because you know how to succeed in one industry doesn't mean that you know how to succeed in every industry, and that it's important to listen to experts in each individual niche. And so that helped me a lot when I ended up the following year starting Hive, which is a technology company, and I had no experience in software. So I immediately, sought the advice of people who did know about software and technology. And, I tried to do my best to surround myself with people who were experts and who were strong in the areas that I was weak.
Right. So you have a business idea, and you don't have to be the person with the brains on the ideas as far as how to execute it, but the visionary part of it is important. That's where you start businesses, is vision, having vision and trying to solve a problem that you can, maybe you're going through a problem yourself, right? You have a problem that you need a solution to, and you can think, man, there's other people that have this same problem that needs to be fixed. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm committed to figuring out this problem. And then you search out the experts on that topic. So for example, Hive, just to give everybody a background on Hive, what is Hive exactly?
So Hive was a social network that helped you connect to the people that were nearby you that shared the same interests as you, so you could make new friends. And so what you would do when you signed up is you would select a bunch of different communities that were based around interests. And then your home feed would populate with a blend of posts from all those different interests you have. So it was like a feed of everything you liked and nothing you didn't. And then all the posts were from people who were nearby. So you could actually go meet up and, play golf with someone if you like golf, or meet up and, with another entrepreneur, for example, which is something I did several times.
Great. Right. So it was like geofenced in as far as territory.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. Gotcha. So then you didn't really know how to do the software, but you had this idea. And then how do you approach people that are experts to do that, and get their attention to want to help you?
Yeah. So sales, one of the benefits of learning sales, and one of the reasons why I think that everybody should learn sales, at least just, 101 baseline sales, is because it helps you communicate in a way that's very clear, concise, and compelling. And so for me, I was able to create a compelling story of what I thought Hive could become. And I was able to use that compelling story to get a lot of really skilled people on board. And ultimately, I was able to use that story, that compelling story, to raise millions of dollars from investors in order to fund Hive, because it was very expensive to develop.
Right. And it's so as you were doing this, I try to ask questions that I'm thinking as I would be going through this situation, because the listeners may be thinking these things, and I'm trying to guess the questions that they would want to know. And this intrigues me, by the way. So that's why I get excited to have people on like you that have been through these things. When you're going out and asking for money for people, right? In sales, you got to be able to ask for money, but investors, what kind of things go through your head? Obviously fear comes in for everybody that's human, but sometimes people can run through fear. But thinking about like, oh shoot, what if this doesn't work? Like I'm going to owe these people this money. Like how, like, does that even cross your mind at all as you were going through it? Or is it something you just put in the back and you were just so committed that, hey, listen, I got an idea. It's going to work. I don't care. I'm so sold on it. And that's why you were successful at it, because you were so sold on it, the idea.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that if you think it might not work when you're in the early stages of like raising money, you shouldn't do it. Like if you have that level of doubt that early on, like doubt, I guess there's also a difference for me. There was a difference for me in believing in myself versus believing in the idea. I believed in Hive with absolute certainty. I didn't necessarily know if I could pull it off.
Right.
Like I didn't know if I was good enough. But I believed in my ability to be resourceful and to figure it out. And those are two different things to me, because when you're trying to sell anything, if you're uncertain of the product you're selling, that comes across to the person considering purchasing the product, right? Mm-hmm. And that lack of confidence in the product can make them not want to buy it. And so for me, like with Hive, I was so certain of the problem that it was solving, and it stemmed originally from me trying to solve a problem for my mom. And it was a problem that I knew that she had. I had already tried to look for a solution and there wasn't one. She was basically chronically disabled and just sat at home all day by herself alone because my parents are divorced and she lost her license from her disability. And so I'd already tried to look for a solution. I'd already tried to find a way to help her make friends who could come and pick her up and do something fun. And there wasn't anything at the time. And so for me, I knew that there was a need for this. I knew that loneliness was an epidemic in America. So I was very certain of the solution that I wanted to create.
Brother, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something, bro. That's what you're made of right there. Dude, you know, the thing with your mom's scenario, right? This is the first part. I had to draw it out of you, man. But this is the part that grabbed, like, that you had a problem that had to do with your mom and a problem that she was dealing with, and you're trying to find a solution for it, couldn't. And what led you into going out and trying to raise money to develop a solution to the problem. And then that, of course, whether, you know, wherever Hive is right now, but then the other stuff that you got into, that was a chain reaction. I don't know if you noticed that or not, but that's what this movement's all about, bro. This is like, this gets me fired up because people need to share this stuff. Because there's people I've talked to recently. Who was it? I talked to somebody recently that had their mother was in a car accident. Actually, it was one of my guests on the show, and I don't want to tell too much because it's not released yet, but her mother was in a car accident. There was an issue there. And a lot of people can relate to that, or disabilities or what have you. And then what comes from that? Like, how do you handle that? You know, you could be selfish sometimes and like, oh, why do I have to deal with this? Or it could be a situation where like, okay, what can I do to maximize, you know, the solutions to the problems, or what can I do to help in this situation? And that I'm glad you brought that up, man. So that's where the Hive thing started.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I talk a lot about how people need a why, and it sounds like what you made of to you is just it's a different way of saying like, what's your why?
Right.
Right. So for me, like my why is the only reason I've achieved anything in life. And I think that you need to have a why that's bigger than you and bigger than money if you want to succeed, certainly as an entrepreneur, just because it's so hard. The obstacles are so great and so frequent that if you don't have a why that's greater than money, you'll just settle for something that's good enough, because there's way easier ways to make money than making money as an entrepreneur. And, you know, so it needs to be something that's bigger than you. And for me, it started with my mom, and then it's compounded over time. So now I have a wife and 4 kids. So that's a huge why for me. I don't want to just complain about the education system and pull my kids from it and homeschool them and leave it a problem for my grandkids. So, you know, fixing and being a part of eventually, you know, my life legacy goal, my life legacy why is to be a part of education reform. And so for me, like my why compounds over time, and it's become this mountain that's greater than anything that I face. And that's why I'm able to overcome all the obstacles that come as a part of being an entrepreneur.
Love it, man. I love it. I didn't know you had 4 kids. I have 2, and man, I can't imagine having 2 more.
Yeah, it's
But,
insane.
because when you're running your companies, most of the time, for the most part, people listen to you. I need this, and this done because of this. This is the vision where we're going, and I need to get this done. We got to get this done. And they listen for the most part, or they don't stay around long. At home, on the other hand,
you can't fire your kids.
What are your ages of your kids?
7, 6, going to be 3 tomorrow, and 2 months.
Yeah, I know, dude. I know. I got a 13 and 7-year-old, man. And it's, I come home and I'm like, dude, people listen to me at work, but I come home and I feel like I'm like a nobody.
Yeah.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy. But you know what though? One of the things that you and I both realize, I'm sure, is that when you come home and no matter what you're doing, how you react to things, your kids are watching you, man. And for me, it creates a situation that's part of my why too. I don't know if it's part of yours, is that I know my kids are watching me and I need to provide the best example for them to go and be successful for themselves or whatever they choose to do. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, for me, my kids are I think we all do this, but I took everything that was great about my childhood and I want to amplify that for my kids. And I took everything I felt was lacking or didn't exist in my childhood, and I want to make sure that that's there for my kids too. And that's a lot to demand of yourself, especially when you're trying to build businesses. But I think that, ultimately that's my greatest purpose in life. And, that's the reason why I do what I do.
Yeah. And the mountain analogy with your why, man, that's powerful. And here's the thing: who's to say what's going to be difficult and what's not when you're developing companies? Some people struggle with one company or don't even get that far. Then other people have hundreds, right? And to me, some people limit themselves thinking, man, I don't know how I'd handle all that, right? So as you're doing your companies, how involved are you with each one? And how do you handle time management? What is your time management hack, so to speak?
So that varies greatly. I have companies that I'm not involved in almost at all. So I'm involved at like a board level. So it'll just be if there's some, really important major strategic decision, I'm involved in the conversation. And then there's other companies that I'm involved in every single day. A lot of what I do, so like what I'm known for doing is the companies that I've started, but a lot of what I do is also like I do a lot of joint venture projects. And so, I would rather leverage my relationships, my resources, and my knowledge base and have someone else do the operations and build the infrastructure and, create the software and do the legwork. And then, when I can just plug myself in, it's very high value, very low time type of transaction, right? So like if somebody's trying to work with a bunch of influencers and monetize, a bunch of influencers, I know thousands of them from, working on Hive, right? Because we worked with influencers. And so I can just plug them all in and facilitate all those introductions, and then I'm hands off. If somebody wants to raise money, you know what I mean? Like there's all these different things where I can just facilitate introductions and I can kind of be hands off. So most of what I do, I would say, as far as like my own businesses, is just bringing, creating relationships that turn into deals. And then I have a team that can facilitate the actual fulfillment of those.
Right. You create the machine, deals. Right? So the machine runs by itself. You just have to put the ingredients in it or the prospect, so to speak. And then also, obviously, you got to make sure your machine's working. So I'm sure you get involved with that sometimes.
That's the hardest part, by the way, for me. I know there's a book called 0 to 1. I think it's behind me somewhere. It's by Peter Thiel. And basically the concept of being a 0 to 1 is being somebody who's really good at taking an idea and making it a reality, a profitable reality, right? So you can take a business idea and you can turn it into a business. Then there's a 1 to 2. 1 to 2s are very operationally gifted. They're very good on the HR department side of like knowing who to hire for what and hiring the right people for the right things and, making sure that things get done on time in the right way. I'm a very good 0 to 1. I'm not a very good 1 to 2. And so I've had to surround myself with people who are good operationally, good with hiring, because that's not a strength of mine. I'm really good at communicating with people, building effective relationships, and good at, closing deals. I'm not a good 1 to 2. And so I think that you have to determine which one of those things you are, because it's very rare that someone is both, and then not try and be an everyman, right? And do everything. Otherwise, you're going to drown yourself. One of the things that I pride myself in is I don't preach about working 15 hours a day, because I don't work even close to that. I think I probably work like 6 hours a day, not even 5 days a week. And it's because I've learned that there's a difference between being busy and producing, right? And so I try to only do things that produce. And if it's not producing, then I find somebody else who can do it. I hire it out. You know what I mean? So that way I can spend more time with my kids. I think that honestly, having a family has made me a lot more efficient, because I have to be, or I'll never see my wife and kids.
Right. So that's a good point, because sometimes when I would cross my mind when you say that you can accomplish what you do in 5 hours, 6 hours a day, whatever, not even 5 days a week, is what, and I'm just being honest because I'm transparent here, is I think to myself, well, what if you do the same exact things you're doing during those hours and just add maybe 2 hours more a day, right? But the other thing is you have a family, you have kids, and you want to spend time with them. On the other hand, though, at some point your kids, you'll see this as they get older too, and I've heard this, it's not just me because I've heard it from other people, is your kids will eventually only want to spend a certain amount of time with you, and then they want their alone time, this and that. So I think you'll be able to maximize that production after that, but I'm just being honest. That's what the first thing that goes through my head. I start to feel guilty. This is a personal issue. I start to feel guilty if I do and accomplish everything I need to that I set out to in 5 to 6 hours. I don't look at it as, oh, now I have free time. I look at it as, oh man, what else can I get into until my kids are ready for me? So that's just something that's, again, I'm just being transparent and honest how I think. Does that ever cross your mind?
I think that mindset can be helpful, and it can also be harmful, and it just depends on whether or not you're, like if I was doing that and I was seeking something to do versus the right something to do, of which sometimes there's not, right? So like the way that I see it is, in life, in business especially, there's seasons of building and seasons of harvesting. And so if I'm in a building season, yeah, I mean, I'll be traveling a ton. I might be home 1 week out of the month, and I'll be speaking a ton, and I'll be writing a book, and I'll be doing all this craziness, right? But then there's harvesting seasons where I'm able to kind of take my foot off the gas. I'm able to take, a couple of weeks completely off. And then when I am working, I can work, 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. And so I think that what it comes down to for me is I put my attention wherever it's needed most at any given moment in time. And so I don't really believe in work-life balance day to day. I don't believe in 8 hours of working and 8 hours at home and 8 hours of sleeping 7 days a week. I believe in, putting my time where it's needed the most at that specific given moment in time. And if you pay attention, you'll know, you'll notice when your family really needs you, right? And the opportunity cost of losing a deal versus losing your family, right? Same thing goes with business. There's times when I have to tell my wife and my kids, hey, I really want to spend time with you too, but I have to do this. And the opportunity cost is flipped, right? It's like, I'm not going to lose $1 million deal because my kid wants to play tag, right? So it's just but the problem then is you have to make time for what your priorities are, because if you try and find time for your priorities and you're the type of person who's very driven, you'll never find the time.
Yep.
And so for me, one of my mentors now, really honestly the only person that I really look up to in all areas of life, someone who also has 4 kids, massively just unheardedly successful in business, extraordinarily charitable. He lives on 10% of his income and gives 90. Just an incredible human being, and an incredible marriage, incredible relationship with his kids. Is he just says, you have to make time for your priorities. You have to know what your priorities are, right? So if family is before work, a lot of times we'll say that, like family, like family and then work. But our lives don't reflect that. The way we actually live our lives don't reflect what our actual priorities are, because we're trying to find time. And so sometimes I'll make time for my family knowing that I'm missing out on huge opportunity in business.
Yep.
But I know the way that I make my decisions is I try and picture myself at 80 or 90 years old, and I put myself in that position as best I can. And I think of myself as that age reflecting back on my decisions. And I try to prevent regrets by experiencing them ahead of time.
Dude, that's I love it, man. I wrote a lot of blogs about this stuff that you're talking about as we go through this. Like, I don't think there's a whole lot of new ideas necessarily, but I think you repackage them, right? One of the things I just wrote a blog about visualizing. And so you just talked about visualizing. Do you use it also in business? And when you come up with an idea, or as you're going through business, or if you have a big meeting coming up, do you take time to visualize ahead of time how it's going to go and how you want it to go?
So I'm super familiar with that concept, and I used to do that with sales, like big meetings and stuff. I still do that occasionally, but what I'm a bigger believer in is state, right? And so for me, like I kind of believe in, like, my version of visualization now would be state for things that are in the moment, and then goals for things that aren't. So I have goals that are written down, right, that I review and revise and look at every single day for things that are longer term. But then I also have, like, I can transform my state if I'm going to go speak on stage, or if I'm going to go into a deal, and I can have complete peak performance in that moment because I'm in state.
In the zone, right?
Yeah.
As like sports.
Yeah, in the zone, right? So that's kind of my version of that. But yeah, I definitely believe in the power of visualization. And essentially, if you look at how you achieve any result, it starts with your belief, the level of belief that you have, because the level of belief that you have in your ability to achieve that result is going to determine the amount of action you take. And the amount of action you take determines the result that you get. And so if you want to increase your belief, you can't just say that you believe more, right? Because it's lying to yourself. So you actually have to visualize you achieving that result in order to increase your belief. And then it's cyclical, right?
That's man, I'm trying to stay in the moment here without, I usually think of questions to ask following up, but I'm really trying to stay in the moment here and think about what you're saying here. Guys, by the way, man, I keep mentioning this. I'm not a professional podcaster. I'm doing this to have some fun and help people, and obviously bring some attention to our company. And, one of the things that's toughest here, just for anybody that hasn't done podcasts before, is staying in the moment and listening to what your guest is saying and really thinking about it, rather than thinking about the next thing you're going to say. And I think that goes back to communication with a lot of people. There's a lot of people that are wait to talkers. And,
yeah. I'm writing a book right now, and I just talked about that.
Did you really?
When
What's that?
Don't be thinking about what you're going to say next.
You're better off pausing and sitting back after they're finished, and really showing that you were listening to what they said. And that's what I'm doing. But I want to share, as I go through this, I talk about the journey being invisible as you're going through different things to get to success points in your life. A lot of people don't see the journey that you're on. And I'm big about sharing that with my guests, my audience, and then also for our business that we're doing in the mortgage business. I really want to share that all over social media, the ups and downs, not to be negative when it's down, but share people, hey, listen, this is what happened, and this is how I'm overcoming it, or this is how I'm thinking about this. So what's the book that you're writing about, or writing right now? What's it about?
So it's about how to, the working title for the book is Valuable. And it's just about how to become a very valuable person in the marketplace, both with the relationships that you have and the skills that you have. And so a lot of it's talking about the strategies of how you can network and build relationships with high profile people, and how you can plug yourself in to, an already well-oiled machine and a system that can generate you significant amounts of money without having to build it yourself. I think that so many people think that in order to be a successful entrepreneur, they have to go and build the big company. And that's just not something that everybody's capable of doing, nor is it something that everybody should do, right? Because it's the wrong mentality. If you want to make a good living as an entrepreneur and you don't have a specific problem that you're setting out to solve for the sake of solving the problem, and you're just trying to make a living, that's okay, but you shouldn't start a company then. Because companies should only be started if they're trying to solve a significant problem in a way that is better than any other, solution on the market as it is. And so if you just want to be your own boss, there's a much easier and better way to do that. And that's basically what I talk about in the book.
Love it, man. Love it. So how can my listeners get a hold of you? What's the best way for them to connect with you, engage with you? And is there anything that you want to direct them to as far as product or business wise right now?
Yeah, so they can just connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram's just Knutson, Knutson. And I recently started a YouTube channel, so they can just type in Brett Knutson and they'll find me on there as well.
Awesome. Any products or business or anything you want to direct them to at this time right now?
Probably not, honestly. I mean, we build a lot of the world's biggest brands with my agency Monopolize. We have a really high minimum to work with us as a client. But if you're looking to, explode your personal brand and you have the budget to do so, we could certainly have a conversation. We work with all of the world's biggest personal brands in business, and we help them, grow and scale and monetize and all that stuff.
Awesome. All right, guys, listeners, listen, we always support our guests. So at least connect, engage with Brett. Awesome dude. I'm glad you came on the show. I want to show gratitude, man. I really appreciated you answered that the call when I asked you, and it means a lot to me. It helps me with my show, and the questions that I ask you, it helps me personally because I'm 43 years old tomorrow. And
happy birthday! So you have the same birthday as my daughter, then?
Oh, really? Yeah, February 7th. Yeah. Yeah, I tell you, after 40, it's not like I had to think about that for a minute. 43 years old, but I'm a sponge. I think when I hit 40, I really stopped being stubborn and thinking I know everything. I think it was 40, maybe a little earlier, and I'm a sponge now, man. And I'm trying to encourage everyone I run into, my employees, everybody, be a sponge. Stop thinking you know everything. That there's no power in thinking that you know everything. And,
no, there's not.
And that's a big downfall for a lot of people. And I'm trying to work with my employees. I'm trying to work with people that outside of this, the mortgage company as well. And when you run into someone that knows everything, it's not attractive.
Well, you want to know what one of the ugliest side effects of thinking you know everything is not realizing how much of what you know you're not applying.
Right.
That's one of the biggest things I realized about myself was, someone would tell me to read a book. And I'm like, well, I already read the book. And then I would realize, well, I'm not applying anything that's in that book. Nothing in my life shows that I've read that book. So does it matter that I know what's in the book? No.
Right.
Like, the world is only benefited by what you apply. Your life is only benefited by what you apply. And so my life in the past couple of years has been now focused on more about applying what I already know. I'm certainly trying to learn as much as I can, as long as it's focused learning and it's going to, benefit me or my family or the world in some way. But I'm trying to pull out and start applying the stuff I know, because the biggest gap in the world, I feel like, is the difference between what people know and what they apply. And that's certainly the case in my life.
And listen, on to that point, I'll end on this. I want to ask you this one last thing. Do you go through this, or have you gone through this, where you know a lot, but you don't realize you know a lot? You take yourself, you don't hold yourself in a high enough standard for knowledge, not knowing it all, but like sometimes I feel like the stuff I know is common, and I feel like everybody should know that, but they don't. And then I say something to someone and they're like, whoa, I didn't know that. That's really awesome. Like, I can. Yeah. Do you find yourself dealing with that sometimes, like for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, especially when it comes to business, I think it's hilarious how many people are always searching for like the secret to success, right? What's the secret? They already know everything that they need to succeed. They just haven't applied it.
Right.
Right. And with the internet, like everyone's ability to be resourceful and figure out the answers to anything that they need to know for free is incredible.
Yep.
So,
Yep. It's about getting committed and then taking action and making it happen. So,
yeah.
Hey, Brett, listen, man, I appreciate you. I'm glad I'm connected with you now. I look forward to staying connected with you. And if there's anything I could ever do for you, all you got to do is reach out, man. I don't know what it would be, but I'm here for you. And because I feel like I'm in debt to you now for coming on the show. So I appreciate you. And I'm just grateful, dude. So listen, guys, you've been listening to the What Are You Made Of podcast with Mike C-Roc. Please connect with me on Instagram at Mikey C-Roc with no K, MikeyCroc. And I just started a YouTube channel as well. And I'm putting these podcasts up so you can watch them on there. Subscribe to that, Mike C-Roc, Ciorrocco. And also on iTunes, Spotify, What Are You Made Of with Mike C-Roc. Appreciate you guys listening. I appreciate all the support and feedback that the Waymo crew has given me. And let's continue to grow this movement. Thank you for being a part of the What Are You Made Of podcast. So that you don't miss future episodes, please rate and subscribe to the What Are You Made Of podcast on your favorite listening or viewing apps, and follow me on your favorite social media platforms. I would love to hear your stories and past experiences and engage with you further.